we have. Welcome, everybody, Planet Green Trees. I'm your host, Michael Komorn. This is Michigan's premier blog talk radio show. We talk about medical cannabis and cannabis reform, and thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight's episode is officially 186. We're calling it Ter Beek, the King, and Rick Jones, each having its own hidden meaning in some way. But today's February 13, 2014. The call number is 1-347-326-9626. Visit us at www.planetgreentrees.com. And again, good evening. I'm Michael Komorn, your host. And with me in the studio to bring you the most up-to-date, informative information. That sounds redundant. All the information you'd want to know about current events and things that are happening in the medical cannabis and cannabis community.
The here and now.
Chad from the Komorn Law Firm and also the Birmingham Compassion Club.
Good evening. It's nice to be here.
And, of course, the one and only editor-in-chief and lifelong advocate, fighter for cannabis reform and medical cannabis patients and caregivers, Rick Thompson of the Compassion Chronicles.
Hello, everybody.
Missing and whereabouts currently known, but I understand maybe en route, the one and only producer of Planet Green Trees and the individual responsible for all the quality guests and the timeliness of the events that we are reporting on week after week, Jamie Lowell, the producer and Third Coast Compassion Center director. Tonight, amongst other things, we're going to be discussing the continuation of the Michigan Supreme Court and their ruling in the Ter Beek versus Wyoming decision, what it means and how it will affect local ordinances around the state. Unfortunately, one of the influential individuals in our community, Senator Rick Jones, strikes again by introducing unnecessary and restrictive legislation to change the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, which will be scheduled to be heard in committee very soon. We're going to hear about that and get some updates on what this is all about. And a Michigan activist used different methods to educate others about marijuana and to encourage the state legislature to pass patient-friendly bills. The attorney for Larry King, Matt Abel, friend and fan of the show of the Cannabis Counsel, has announced, and we're going to be talking about this as well, what may be described as the longest-running medical marijuana case in the state has finally been dismissed. Does that surpass the Redden case? Because Redden started before.
Indeed.
It did, I think, yes. Joining us tonight is going to be Attorney Daniel Korobkin, Deputy Legal Director at the American Civil Liberties Union, who worked on the Ter Beek versus Wyoming case and offered the oral arguments on behalf of Ter Beek in front of the Michigan Supreme Court, who also had involvement in the successful outcomes in the Larry King case. Also, Michigan activist Nicole Hernandez, who has organized a productive grassroots campaign to get citizens to contact their state senators in support of the patient-friendly bill 4271 and 5104 with pre-written statements, handwritten letters, and phone calls. And Shiloh Stevens, who has used public television as the basis for a campaign to help educate the general public about cannabis, will be joining us as well. And I understand he's doing a television show in Richardville's community. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Taking it to the people. Also, we're going to keep our ongoing discussions on breaking news concerning the new bills to limit or eliminate some of the currently acceptable and necessary medical marijuana activity in Michigan, introduced by Senator Jones. I'm going to rant in a little while, and Rick's going to bring the news, as he does every week, and so much more. You don't want to miss any of it. I do want to give a couple of shout-outs. First to my very good friend Dewey, who was back in the saddle this past week, helping me get to all the places that I need to, and being my agent provocateur in some of the events. As you kind of need somebody like that in court. You know how many times I have walked out of court to talk to my client, and my secret agent remained in the courtroom and told me all the things that were said about me in the case when I was gone. Very helpful. In addition, unequivocally, he has become the only driver that can get me where I need to be on time. We learned that yesterday when Chad attempted to intercede. But all good efforts and a lot of love to do it. Of course, Pam, who was...
it was on time like tonight was on time.
That's right. Nobody needs to know what that means. And, of course, Pam, who was responsible for all of Dewey's good deeds. And we miss you, Pam. Look forward to seeing you. Also, to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. Please visit the website. The forums provide a very safe and comfortable environment for patients to learn about the evolution of medical cannabis in Michigan, and a whole lot of information to digest and really become educated. I want to thank the moderators and the administrators that volunteer to assist in that regard. Also, Komorn Law, 1-800-656-3557. The Marijuana Ranch, 313-422-5281. Call and make an appointment to visit and tour the Cultural Center of Marijuana.
Say hello to the rancher.
Also, a big shout out to our good friend Dr. Kumar Singh of the Green Light Clinic, 248-390-0574. I can't say enough how important it is to have the only bona fide special doctor-patient relationship with your doctor who may be involved in the certification process. And as I've been encouraging patients to be more responsible for their charts, which is kind of silly, but it's what needs to be done when the physicians that are courageous enough to participate in the process aren't reading the law and trying to conform their practices, albeit silly, ridiculous, and not my way, not my interpretation of how I think it should be, but it is the way. And just the knowledge to pick up and reform your practice to account for these silly things is, I think, is a reason enough. But I know that Dr. Singh is working very diligent with the patients and prepares like none other. He needs to come to court. So shout out to Dr. Singh as well. I also want to, again, give a big thanks to all the patients. I still moved by your effort and energies in the testimony that you offered a couple weeks ago in the John Roberts case. We're going to be back there again on February 20th, I want to say.
The 18th.
18th, so.
And the 20th.
And the 20th, right. The 18th is not the return of the Section 8 hearing.
Right.
But for the purpose of the patients, many don't know, it was very compelling testimony for some very sick people who had not been given a lot of faith in any kind of treatment because their conditions were so bad, and I'm amazed by their stories and their courage in coming to court and telling it, but also the courage in which they live their lives in that situation, and looking past it and still embracing every day like it was the most important day. And I can't tell you how still I'm thinking about you guys, and I want to thank you for your courage. Also, I want to give a shout out to our good friend in the community and victim for way too many years, Bob Redden. I know, big fan of the show, and Bob has just gone through a terrible process as Larry King did, and of course Tori's not well, and she's been admitted to hospice, and we send our love and prayers to the Tori and Bob. So, all right. With that being said, I'm going to rant here in a second, and then we're going to take a break and come back and do some news. I'm going to rant a little bit about the Larry King case and about the Hartwick and Tuttles and what it means and why things are getting a little ridiculous. I can't tell you like how joyful I was when I read the post at the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association. There's been this thread that's been going since Larry King's case was returned from the Michigan Supreme Court, where he was very publicly discussing with the rest of the community. I came back and now they want to offer me a misdemeanor. They want me to take a plea and end their nightmare. And I'm not doing it. I want to fight this thing, and I'm gonna. But before I even get to that point, I think just a quick backdrop on Larry King for those that don't know. I think someone criticized the other day that we need to do a little bit more foundational stuff, and I assume that everybody knows what I'm talking about. But the Larry King case was
Who said that?
the first. It was the first Supreme Court case that was heard, that in the Kolonik case. But Larry King's case was very, very interesting because it dealt with a outdoor grow. It involved the question of what an enclosed lock facility is. And it also impacted whether or not if you were in violation of the enclosed lock facility or some other aspect of Section 4 of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, did that forever cause you to violate the act in such a way that you couldn't even argue a medical marijuana defense. And it was the Michigan Supreme Court in the People versus Larry King and People versus Edward Kolonik case that set down the law of the land. It was a unanimous opinion. It was 7-0. The joke is that these justices couldn't agree on the toppings for their pizza, let alone a legal issue, but all 7 of them came together. And what to me was most significant about it, and I don't want to say anything without, but the Supreme Court, despite its landing on that the Michigan medical marijuana is an exemption, if you look past that, they have been the salvage or resolve for the act. I can't tell you the damage that has been attempted by the Michigan Court of Appeals, 2 cases recently, Tuttles and Hardwick, but up to that point before...
And they come together unanimously to overrule it.
Not only do they come together unanimously, prior to the King case being taken and ruled upon, and the Kalanick case being taken and ruled upon by the Michigan Supreme Court, there was 18 cases that had gone to the Michigan Court of Appeals. They had left the trial court with 9 of those cases being victories for defendants, patients, caregivers, and 9 of those victories being for prosecutors and the police. And after the Court of Appeals got their fingers in it, the score was 18 victories, court rulings for prosecutors and police, and 0 for patients and caregivers. And it was, without a doubt, a runaway train that was not looking good. That there was things that were being said that were so abusive, so misguided in these opinions. And from these opinions is what was being argued in court, to the point that the concept that we've begun to understand and sometimes actually be able to use, the right to present a medical marijuana defense before the court, was not a reality. And when I talk about these 18 Court of Appeal cases, there were decisions that were being made that were having immediate effects in courtrooms across the state of Michigan.
People were routinely gagged.
Gagged from speaking the truth. I spoke with Stuart Friedman tonight, who was mentioned in passing the Barb Agro appeal to the Michigan Supreme Court. That one's still going on. That came out of an era where the original ruling was that she wasn't allowed to discuss medical marijuana before the jury. And this was the path that we were on. So the significance of King and Kalanick, I can't even mention. I can't overstate it. I mean, it's significant for so many reasons, because first it was a ending to the runaway train. It was what's that word? It sounds offensive, like a bitch slap. Is that offensive to the Court of Appeals? And I have maintained, and I think I've got Tim Beck to agree with me on a few occasions, that it wasn't just the Court of Appeals, but it was the influence of our Attorney General, that he had stepped outside of his boundaries in the executive branch as the law enforcement officer for the state, and the executive branch, of course, is the Attorney General. But he'd gotten into the legislature, and he was influencing the Court of Appeals. And we may disagree about the Michigan medical marijuana, but you know what? Like in Marbury versus Madison, the courts are the final arbiter of disputes amongst our government. And when the 3 branches of government are conspiring, as it seemed like they were, it is for the Supreme Court to be the deciders of what is going to play out from this point forward. You know what they did? They stomped their foot down and said, this is absolutely wrong. This is a voter initiative, and you cannot look past this significant language that everybody had noticed of, the 63% of the people that voted for it, that they saw these words. I don't care what the law looks like. This initiative ballot said registered and unregistered patients shall have a defense to any charges involving marijuana. You cannot argue that 63% of the electorate voted for that overwhelmingly, and a majority in every single county across the state. And the Supreme Court, for the love of God, knew enough to read the law and see what it says and try to make some sense of it and end the insanity. But the Larry King case is the case by which this went down. We have Larry King to thank for his for fighting this case, and my comment to him was, there's nothing that can repay you for what you've had to go through, but to be the case that decided the right to present a defense, which is the paradigm shift in Michigan's jurisprudence history that has never been able to be done before. That for the first time ever, you can stand before a jury potentially and argue, this marijuana, we possessed it. My clients possessed it. There's no doubt about this. We don't have to argue the police are lying or it wasn't mine. We own this, and we were using it for medical purposes. And this is why. And we're going to tell a story that has nothing to do with law enforcement. It has nothing to do with public safety. It's about an explanation about how medical cannabis is used. And we can have a debate by the narcotics officers who get qualified as experts in drug trafficking, who will say, oh, no. In my experience as a drug trafficking officer and executing hundreds of search warrants, that quantity of marijuana, that is drug trafficking quantity. That scale right there, that's drug trafficking paraphernalia. You can look at them and say, have you ever read one study about dosing? Have you ever in your life read Carter or Agarwal? Or are you aware of the federal government's program for medical cannabis? So you heard a guy named Herb Roosevelt. Do you know how much marijuana the federal government gives him? 10 ounces a month. So when you say that, I mean, the point is that it is an ability to tell and explain behavior that has always been considered illegal in a way that is medical, in a way that literally the opposition has no concept of and is resistant to at every single possible level and cannot and will not rebut it. And more so when given the opportunity to tell a jury about that, and with the approach of that it is a public safety issue by berating it and calling it something that they have no scientific or medical basis to support, people get pissed. And the juries that get pissed let the parties know that they're pissed by verdicts. And this is what the Larry King case provided for us. If I sit there in the show every week and say social change in medical marijuana laws is going to come from, one of the ways is going to come from winning jury trials, that when a prosecutor gets a verdict of not guilty in a medical marijuana case, it is a message to them that the community is not happy with how they're spending the resources, amongst other things. I joke that when a jury goes to deliberate after hearing a case, they walk in the back, they close the door, and they look at each other and say, didn't we pass the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act? Why did I have to take 4 days off work? What did the police say? What's the problem here? Or why, police say that this is a medical, the guy, please. So the point is that while I maintain that it's an environment that's wealthy with potential not guilty verdicts, we wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for Larry King. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And the ability to be able to do that is what is one of the options, one of the branches of government by which some substantive change can come about, because without the right to present a medical marijuana defense, your chances of winning are probably less. But with the opportunity to do that, you've got more chance of winning. Verdicts will change policy, and they will have to look and rethink the way that they're treating the patient and caregiver community. Now,
without it, you're relying on the prevention of arrest.
That's right. And that's only half the story. Jamie's cringing wherever he is right now, I know. Get to the guests already, Jesus. No, here's the final part of the story, and it's the story that isn't really told. That after the case, it was remanded back to the circuit court out in Shiawassee. That you've been through 3.5 years of pins and needles. I mean, I know that Larry took, the case very personally. Like he felt that he let a lot of people in the community down because of the adverse ruling at the Court of Appeals. Like he, of the unintelligent and the lacking in understanding of really what's happening, how the process works, they may have criticized him, made him feel bad. This is absurd, Larry, because at the end of the day, if it wasn't for you and being able to fight and sustain as you did with tenacity, fighting the burden of just being involved in the court system, we wouldn't have what we have today because of you. And the point I wanted to make is when it gets back to the court, these prosecutors don't dismiss it. They won't leave him alone. They force him to proceed with a Section 8 hearing, much to his chagrin and disenchantment, even more so with the system, making him question everything and wondering what he should do and just having no faith, because if I had to take it all the way to the Supreme Court and I get these rulings and you're still going to fight me, you're still going to make me prove my case. And this went on for months and months and months. I wonder what the date was of that thread when it started and how many months it's been that he's been back from the Supreme Court. I'm not talking about the 3 years that it took before he got to the Supreme Court.
Last year.
So it's been... So the idea of that is that, nobody speaks about it. I mention to my clients when I talk to them and when they have their moments, I remind them. I may have talked to you, if I didn't, I'm telling you now that one of the things that isn't talked about is having to endure, having to come to court, take time out of what would be your normal schedule. I get up every day, I go to court, that's what I do. That's my normal schedule. Other individuals having to, consistently, I don't know, whether it's the dress or showing up or being on time or going through the medical kills your whole day. And it's not easy. People don't go into it with the idea that I'm just going to go watch a movie and every day. It is your life and felony convictions and money and forfeiture and, real change of jail, prison, all kinds of things that are on the line. So to live with that for one case is awful. To be dragged into the system, it's awful. But to be successful, you got to know this, and you have to endure this, and you've got to be willing to show up every single time and be ready to fight. And that means you may be in training to show up to fight, and it gets moved. The fight gets bumped to another day. And all that energy, all the timing, training that you went through, it's just got to be redone. And this is mental torture to a lot. And there are things that can frustrate the process. And I will tell you that the emotion of frustration is the emotion of loss, that you will lose your case when you get frustrated. These are the lessons of a lawyer from 21 years, that I will tell you that those are the things that the system is designed to bring upon you. And the frustration and the when's it going to end and just dragging you through. And
it's meant to be a burden.
It's meant to beat you down. And to many, it's successful. Economic reasons, financial reasons, or just the emotional and spiritual kill that it brings to you or your family. Try to get some semblance of your life back, albeit it may be completely different and substantive constitutional rights may be lost because of a felony conviction. This is what one has to endure. I try to remind my clients of that. Sometimes I don't always get to them before they have they feel it emotionally and what it is to go through. But I mention it now for anyone that wants to listen to it, to give support to those that they know that are enduring this and understand that it is something like you've never known unless you've gone through it. But more importantly, the story of Larry King is I've experienced with many of my clients who, as we're fighting this battle, it's not a sprint. It is a marathon that you've got to have a steady pace all the time. And every time they throw a bomb, you got to step back and throw one back. They pull out of the bunker and fire some shots. You got to get up and do the same. You got to never let them think that you're going away. Now, this is insane to have to endure this for what? Some medical marijuana, but Larry King did that, and I don't know that is the story that's being told. He won, he's getting his property back, but I just got to give it up for Larry. I talked to you throughout it. I know how frustrated you were, and just to endure is just very heroic to me, and I think everyone in the community should be proud to call you a fellow community member and should give kudos and praise to you for what you went through and that you fought it to the end. It's not an easy battle, and I think everyone should be appreciative. I know that I am. So a big shout-out to Larry King. We're going to hear more from Dan Korobkin later on, who I know was involved in the appeal, and I want to hear his take on it in that aspect. But so much more. We come back, we're going to get Rick with the news, and we got, I think, our callers on the line, and we're going to get to all of you and our guests. So stand by. Take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is Planet Green Trees.